Welcome back to Practically Creative today. I'm Melissa, and we have already done the embroidery portion of this. I'll put a link up in the top so that you can see how we did all the embroidery for this. And we're going to go from here, and I'm going to show you how to put your quilt as you go blocks together. So what I'm doing here is I'm just squaring up my quilt as you go blocks to make sure that they're all ready for our next step. It looks like I'm talking. I don't know if I'm muttering to myself or what, but quick, easy. We're going to square them up, and then we're going to go on to the next step. Here, all I've done is laid my blocks out, and then I'm going to cut some sashing to go in between them. And I'm just doing it on my little mat there. I'm going to cut 4 shorter pieces and then a longer piece. I'm cutting 2 shorter pieces and then a longer piece. Sorry about that. And I don't worry about exact measurements because if the sashing piece stretches, I want to have room. And it's 2 longer pieces for the front and the back, and then the 4 shorter pieces for the next step. I also cut batting pieces to go in here just to make sure that I had enough to do it. And I'm being all fussy with the measurements. You don't need to be. Cut them longer than you need, and you can trim them out when you're ready to put everything together. Okay, so we've gone to the sewing machine now. I'm attaching sashing to the back of one piece, and I'm using clips to hold it on. And then I'm going to turn that piece over, and I'm going to attach a piece of sashing to the front also. And here's where you can see why I just cut my sashing at a approximate length, because I want to make sure that it covers completely from one edge to the other of the block. And once I have both pieces attached, I'm going to sew it on with a 1/4 inch seam to this block. Now what I'm doing is I'm pushing the back piece of sashing forward, and then I'm going to add the next block. I had to think about it for a minute here, but what I want is the back of the second block against the sashing so that I can put another 1/4 inch seam in here. I'm not pinning this one. I probably should have. Shoot me. Sometimes I do it that way. But I'm just quickly taking a 1/4 inch stitch, and I'm only sewing through the sashing and the back of the second block. And now that I've got it laid out, I'm going to fold over a 1/4 inch on the front piece of sashing. You could do this ahead of time and iron it down to make it easier for yourself. I have a tendency to just do it this way. And I'm going to put a piece of batting in there. And I'm trying to tuck it in. You can do it however you like or cut it thinner. But I happen to like the way it looks whenever it's cut in there like that. And then now what I'm doing is once the batting is in, one of the few places you'll see me use pins is I'm going to fold the sashing over and then I'm going to pin it down so that I can put another seam in there. This is where it would have been handy if I had ironed the 1/4 inch on the edge of my sashing. I don't put a lot of pins in, just 2 or 3 to hold it. I use my fingers a whole lot to hold stuff like this. And now we're just going to put a seam down through there, taking our pins out before we get to them. And notice I keep my left hand on there, make sure everything's still laid down. Now, once you've done all of your horizontal rows, you're going to join your rows vertically the exact same way that you joined your horizontal pieces. Attach your sashing to the back of your horizontal row. Then flip it over and put the front piece on. And I always do the back first because usually the backing piece is the one that's looser. And once you've got them both on there, sew them on with a 1/4 inch stitch. And then we're going to do the same with the horizontal row as we did with the individual blocks. Push your sashing on the back up. And then take the other block. On this one, you'll notice that I am laying it out to make sure that they're all going the same direction. And I decided to trim that little piece of sashing at the end, or batting, so that it was even. I pinned the sashing to the back of the second piece, and I'm just sewing it on. And now I'm adding my backing to the center of the horizontal piece. My batting, to the center of the horizontal piece. It's a little fiddly with my hands today. But I'm going to tuck it all down in there. And of course, if you're doing a bigger piece than I am, because I do realize mine's only 4 blocks, if you're doing a bigger piece, you may want to take this to a table and do it. And then you're going to fold your sashing over and pin it down, just like you did before. And now that you have it all pinned, then you're going to go down and do a seam again. This would be a great place to use a decorative stitch if you wanted to. But remember to take your pins out before you get to the pin. Sorry. And I'm not going to show binding on this because I think everybody knows how to bind. It's pretty straightforward, just the same way that you would do it on any other quilt. It's just that all of your quilting is already done. And here's what it looks like at various stages. And then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to sew down the sashing line. Again, removing my pins before I get there. And we're just going to sew. I don't know what I was checking up there. But feel free to go as slow or as fast as you want. This would also be a great place if you wanted to use a decorative stitch. This would be a great place to do it. And once I have this line sewn down, the next step is to put binding around my quilt. And I won't be covering binding in this video, because Quilt As You Go doesn't need anything different as far as binding.